startup journey is such a incredibly wildly winding road. Booby traps and obstacles everywhere.
Entrepreneurship is a really, really difficult journey. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And that's why 95% of the population don't do it.
Yeah, fair enough. You have to start somewhere, but the most important, it doesn't matter where you start, it's just that you start. What's the worst that can happen, right? Yeah.
It is not an overnight gig.
No.
It is consistency, it is small steps daily, running my own business without any repercussions. That's made Wild now very successful.
Welcome to today's episode of Well On Our Way. Today I'm joined by Emma Burdett, the founder and CEO of WOOW. WOOW is a female leadership and development platform, an epic community of female executives and aspiring female leaders. Emma has been on an incredible roller coaster ride building WOOW with plenty of ups and downs, and I'm sure she'll tell us a good story. Enjoy the show. Emma.
Gary.
Tell me why WOOW is so important to you.
Oh, that's a big question to start.
You're welcome.
Why is Wild so important? So I think the passion for Wild really started around 2006. So I'm from a corporate background. I sold real estate software in central London for a long time. Very, very male-dominated, still is. Very much the old boys network. And I got a meeting with a prospect, a huge actually property company, and I was really excited, and I went in with my BlackBerry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Showing my age now. And in walked a really flustered guy and was looking behind me saying, "Where's the sales guy?" And I was like, well, it's just me. And I started to go on with my sales pitch about how the software was going to save them time and money, because that's what all software does. Yeah. And he was just getting increasingly infuriated and stood up and barked at me to get out of his office. You're a silly girl, and what do you know about real estate? So I remember standing in the rain, because obviously it always rains in the UK, crying my eyes out. And it really, really affected me. And it was probably the first time I'd encountered discrimination for being a girl, obviously now a woman. Yeah. But, it really affected my confidence. And that was like the catalyst as I've gone through my career to ensure that I don't want any other females to endure what I've endured. So that probably was the very, very first thing that happened that allowed me to cultivate a passion over the years.
Let's take a step even further back then. So that you said that was your first kind of experience of discrimination, gender discrimination in the workplace or, a work environment. Let's go back to your early years, because in my experience, it's there's certain points, there's certain moments in time that just flick a switch in your brain to think, oh, I need to do this, or I need to do something about this. Obviously, one of those was this example you've just given us. What about back in your early days, in your childhood, at school, growing up, where you lived, your parents, your family? Like, what early influences kind of shaped who you are today and the journey that you're on?
Actually, no one's ever asked me this, so it's quite interesting to talk about it. So I had what I would call a bit of an unusual upbringing, because my dad was a market trader. Right. And actually a barrow boy by trade. So he was one of four brothers. Our family was quite well known in Nottingham, where I'm originally from, which is also something I don't delve into either.
Why is that?
I don't know really. People don't really go back that far. So normally they want to know about the wild journey.
Yeah.
So
but is Nottingham, let's dive into that, is Nottingham, like, coming from Nottingham, is something you're proud of or something you don't talk about? Is there a reason?
Well, I moved to London from 18 to go to university, and I lived in London 20 years. So that kind of was what I identify with home.
Yeah.
My parents were very, very working class, and originally from council estates, but obviously that work mentality. And my father made money, lost it, made money, lost it, made money, lost it. But they were wealthy. And they sent me to a girls' private school, which it's funny because I've always been very outspoken. I've always been very, very confident. And over the years, that type of personality has really, really gotten me into trouble.
Right.
So went to a girls' private school, never ever fitted in, because the girls were old money, so they were very posh, and I wasn't posh. So that really was quite a difficult time, I think. I didn't enjoy school. I was always in trouble. I was suspended, which again was unheard of at a girls' school. So I guess I really have felt like I haven't really fitted in lots of situations that I've been in growing up. Now, why this is relevant to Wild and the work I do now, because I have actually been fired 2 to 3 times, and it's not because I've been awful at my job. It's not been because I've done things which are antisocial. It's actually because I've had a voice, and I've spoken up for myself, and I've always stayed true to who I am.
Yep.
And that, when I've been in patriarchal, male-dominated environments, has not gone down well at all. So,
but it also didn't go down well in the all-girls school environment.
No.
So it doesn't go down well in many environments, I guess.
For many environments.
Yeah. So I think having that kind of outsider or underdog, or what would the feeling be? How did it make you feel being at that all-girls school? Ignore the male-dominated work environment at the all-girls school where you didn't fit in. Like, what did that feel like, and what did that fuel later on in life, do you think?
Lots of feelings of being ostracized, always ostracized. And it gave me this real deep sense of not feeling good enough and not fitting in. And that actually translated to college and university. But upon reflection, when you're high-spirited, when you're articulate and bombastic and gregarious and you put yourself forward, it doesn't go down very well in society. And the main reason for that is, girls, when we're raised, we are taught that we need to see ourselves in this quiet space and that we shouldn't speak up, and that boys take charge and they're the leaders. And this is where all of the problems start. And so if girls spoke up, they're labelled bossy. And even this translates to the workplace now. You're aggressive, you're emotional. Non-constructive criticism that we would never, ever say to men. But what has been good about this story and about the whole length of my career is that I've been able to now use the controversy and my voice as a voice for reform, a voice for the voiceless, and I'm able to put myself out there as the leader of Wild, running my own business without any repercussions of what I might say or do. I don't have a boss or a director who's going to reprimand me or threaten me or fire me, and that's made Wild now very successful.
So I think a lot of entrepreneurs
Have been fired.
or are outsiders, or maybe don't have a lot of friends at certain points, or relationships break down, and we'll probably go into all of that a bit later. But I guess a lot of entrepreneurs do their thing because they don't fit in elsewhere, right? And I think that's clearly the case with yourself. But staying with the early years for just a little bit longer, you said that girls are raised to kind of be a certain way, or like you said, be maybe seen and not heard. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That was just running through my mind.
Is that what happened for you? Is that where this rebellious nature came from? Is it something that was happened at home and then that carried on with you, or is that from friends and peers, or what is it? Because I know that my early years shaped me in the direction I went on, so I'm sure that and my upbringing, and I'm sure that yours has definitely had an influence on your trajectory. Is that the case?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to share something I've never shared. So my dad years ago went to prison, and it was for tax fraud, and I didn't know. And I was at this girls' private school in Nottingham, which is a small place.
Yeah.
I was having an argument with a girl one day, and her family knew my family. And she turned around to me and was like, at least my dad hasn't been in prison. Ooh. So obviously, being in a girls' private school, all the other girls were like, what do you mean? You know, like this massive scandal.
Yeah.
And I remember going home and saying to my mum, like, has my dad been in prison?
Yeah.
I mean, it's humorous looking back, and I don't know why I don't share it. It is a big part of my journey, but as I say, no one's actually delved that deep into it.
Yep.
And that really did knock me sideways. In adjacent to, my parents got divorced when I was 14.
Right.
And that really did shake my world. You know, you're going through puberty, you are making decisions about GCSEs.
Yep.
I didn't fit in, I was ostracised. And it made me just completely go off the rails.
Yep.
Yeah, that probably was the catalyst for me being extremely rebellious. And then later that translated to hanging around with the wrong people and drinking too much and everything that goes with that. So
yeah, I think those feelings compound so quickly, right? When particularly when they're negative feelings, but so many times that's the spark that you need to kind of like find a different pathway. And obviously you then went on to corporate or college or down to London and into the corporate world. But some people, it lights the spark very early, and sometimes it just stays there, and then eventually the switch is turned on. So tell me about Wild. How do you get from corporate life in London, where clearly there's discrimination rife in that market, but probably every market, to be honest, every industry. Let's talk about your journey from that point in London where you're crying in the rain, right, outside that office, to the sunshine in Dubai, leading platform in the Middle East. How did that journey unfold?
So don't get me wrong, I did enjoy my 20s in central London in these environments. It was brilliant. It was amazing. Yep. And, I am what we call a grafter. So I was working 12-hour days and loved the commission checks and all of that. I really, really did relish. But interestingly, I never wanted to go to university. Because obviously being the rebel that I am, my dad had me on market stalls from being like 7. Yep. So I have always been gifted with being able to sell, which serves you quite well in your career. Definitely. So, and I didn't really want to go to corporates, but I just kind of felt pressured that I should do a degree, because if you don't have one, what are you going to do, all of that. And actually, I've got a photographic memory, so I can glean information very, very quickly, which has helped me obviously stand on stage and speak and stuff as well. So I had this job selling software for another company, and had an awful female boss. So the bullying and the awful bosses is just not something which is solely men.
It's not gender specific.
It's not gender specific. Yeah. She was absolutely vile. She bullied me. She said the most horrendous things to me. She used to pull me aside and say, you're quite attractive, but you've got no depth, and all of these awful, awful, awful things. And I was going through a breakup at the time, and she said to me, here's the Middle East, go and grow the market. And I'd never been to Dubai, ever.
Right.
And
this is when?
So, 2012.
Right.
So it was like, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job. So this particular software that we sold, some people in Dubai from the UK had licenses. So being someone that absolutely thrives under pressure, I took the challenge, and I got 22 new business meetings for my first Dubai trip alone.
Nice.
And they were with Al Halal Bank, they were with SCB Bank, they were with Imar, big propcos. And much to her dismay, because actually I think she tried to set me up to fail.
Yeah, send you out here to,
And I was staying in the Ritz-Carlton in the DIFC, because we had a corporate rate, for 3 to 4 weeks, and then going back to Old Street in London going,
what am I doing?
What am I doing here?
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
That's having the time of my life, And I made a decision that actually I want to move to Dubai and start a new future and a new life for myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go down the software route. I was done with what I was doing. Some of the software had lead data for commercial buildings.
Right.
So I was quite friendly with the Fit Out Furniture gang. And I just registered with some recruiters and just said, look, I want to get a job.
Yeah.
So my very first job in 2014 was working with Hayworth, who are a global office high-end furniture manufacturer.
Right.
Came to Dubai completely on my own, didn't know one person. I was so like, I'm going to Dubai. And then I remember I moved into my apartment in JBR. And 2 weeks in, I had this car going to the back of the taxi I was in. And I remember sitting in my apartment what have I done? I don't know anybody. And then I got headhunted into... So my job was BD.
Yep.
And, I was a good networker. I was out. I was taking clients out. That's always been something very good for me.
Being outspoken, confident helps when it comes to networking. So using your tools,
Exactly. Got headhunted into a role for a global manufacturer to set up a division for them. And it was a big role. And I was setting this division up, and they asked me to build a women's network as a CSR campaign. So I said, okay, sounds interesting. And no one spoke about gender equality in 2016. People do talk about it now, but obviously there's not much action.
Still, plenty of action to be taken.
When we look at the stats. So I started a women's network with 4 women and a sheet of paper, so amateur, sandwiches, writing on these posters on the wall. I grew it to 15. I saw firsthand the power of women coming together with a genuine sense of solidarity.
Yep.
I was winning tons of business because I wasn't going in as a supplier. I was Emma that leads this women's network. And it turned bittersweet, and I ended up encountering workplace challenges and losing my job. So
Why?
it seems that my success and popularity and visibility with the women's network had ruffled feathers in the business. And, it's very funny when you shine, people feel that you're taking their shine.
Yeah, threatened.
And unfortunately, I think that my colleagues felt very, very threatened and intimidated by that. I don't know whether they thought that I was going to steam into their jobs or whatever it was.
Yep.
So it was actually a really, really awful situation. And it ended up in me having a mental breakdown.
Right. So let's pause there for a moment, because we talked earlier around the girls' school and the corporate environments where the theme was, you didn't really fit in. Seems like this has happened again because of your skill set, your ability, the wins you were putting on the board, and you're right. I think when people are successful, people around you who are not as successful or successful at all, feel even more threatened, maybe even belittled, not on purpose, but see other people winning is not a nice feeling if you're not winning yourself. And like you said, your confidence and your ability to be vocal, obviously all compounded to make you not fit in, which is probably the best thing that ever happened to you, right? But also probably the worst thing that could ever happen to you is having a mental breakdown. So let's start there. How did you navigate that complex journey of being? Well, you tell us how you felt. I'm guessing horrific, dark, everything in between. How do you go into that knowing that you're being maybe forced out of a role or a company if you haven't already been, and finding the light at the other end of the tunnel? Talk us through that process.
Yeah, I feel emotional. So I think it's very difficult when you feel that everything is against you. And you're in environments where you're being set up to fail. I was being demoted. I was being bullied for a long time. And I'm pretty tough. But it grinds you down. And I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, checking my phone, this constant state of fear, this knot in my stomach, not being able to sleep.
What fear of?
I think losing my job.
Right.
I mean, it's fully looking back as an entrepreneur, right? But then, you know, if you're in corporate, your job is your life.
Yeah, and your visa and your...
It's your world. It's your life.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was in just this trepidation constantly. Then when I finally got let go of, I struggled to get another job because the market that I was in was quite small.
Yeah.
And I had friends in Singapore who said, why don't you come over here, have some interviews and a new start?
Yeah.
And I was up the wall. I mean, looking back, like I was not in a good way at all. Like I really wasn't. And...
Such as?
Extreme levels of anxiety, not being able to sleep, not being able to eat, going through a breakdown process, because it's not an overnight thing, it's a process.
Yeah.
And what had happened, stories started to leak out in Singapore. So, you know, I was having interviews with companies that were very aligned to my experience, but because the market was small, I just got a sense that things were being said.
Yeah.
So back to my friend's apartment and, you know, crying, what am I going to do? And my lease expired in the May and my visa and everything.
Yep.
And I would have had to have left Dubai. And that wasn't an option.
Yep.
So they
going
said...
back to the grey skies of London town is not...
Old Street.
Old Street, yeah. not quite as appealing, is it?
So they said... take yourself off to Thailand because it's like an hour away from Singapore.
Yeah.
And I'd never been to Thailand. So I went to the airport and I remember being in the bookstore and a book fell off the shelf and it was The Universe Has Your Back by Gabrielle Bernstein, who is a New Age spiritual teacher.
Yep.
And I bought the book, and it's actually a book that I get every single one of my clients to read because it probably was the catalyst for changing my life. You can just read something at that moment, which is what you need to see.
Yep.
So I went to Thailand for my own version of Eat, Pray, Love.
How did that go?
Lots of eating, lots of praying, and no loving.
Oh, well, 2 out of 3 is not bad.
And this is when I turned to meditation.
Right.
So I woke up one morning and I got a final no from a job offer. And
In Singapore or Dubai?
In Singapore.
Right.
Dubai was a no-go anyway.
Yeah.
And I hit my knees in breakdown mode and I prayed for a miracle. And I'd had this spiritual healer in Luton who gave me this like distance reading. So just clutching at straws really.
Yeah.
And she said, you know, look for the butterfly. It speaks of change and joy. And I just thought, what load of old rubbish. And then when I walked outside, there were butterflies everywhere. And I just thought, oh my God, like, wow. So I actually had a spiritual epiphany. And I really got into meditation and it saved my life.
And were you spiritual before that moment at all?
So I picked up The Secret, which I think everyone knows, which was kind of like, you know, elementary. And then during this breakdown process, because I was alone with self and in this extreme discomfort, that is your opportunity to turn inwards.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, in this rock bottom moment that I cracked open to a deeper understanding. And I am very spiritual. It's something, again, I don't talk about. And it's something I'm starting to talk about more in my business. I'm actually off to an ashram in India to study Kundalini.
Nice.
Yeah. But
why don't you talk about it?
I felt a little bit, ashamed isn't the right word, but a little bit like, ooh, are women in corporates ready for this work? And also still learning.
Are you ready? I guess. Yeah,
exactly. Am I ready? Am I ready to share these learnings and messages?
Yeah.
And I went recently, I mean, we're digressing from the question, but I went recently to Thailand, again, 6 years later, to write the next phase of my business.
Yep.
That didn't happen, but I spent time with the monks, and I was meditating 3 or 4 hours a day.
Wow.
Nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. Way out of my comfort zone, even as a quite a spiritual person. And I came back, and I've had a lot of health issues over the last few years, and one of those is migraines continually, daily. And I started just ramping up my meditation. And then I think as I've leaned more and more and more into my spirituality, I've just had this like, do you know, I'm going to bring this work to Wild now.
Yep.
Because ultimately we're in suffering mindsets. You know, we coach women, we do leadership programs, as you know, and 95% of people we deal with are in these perpetual states of fear, stress, anxiety, on the ledge, all of the great work that you support to get out of and achieve that balance. And meditation single-handedly is a life-changing practice. You know, 95% of our brain is ran from the subconscious, and we only access it through meditation.
Yep.
And you start to access alpha brainwaves, and that isn't even spiritual, that's scientific.
Yep.
And when you access your alpha brainwaves, you start having these hits of inspiration and these moments of joy and creativity. And everyone wants to know how I've created Wild. This is how I've created Wild. It's by leaning into my faith and my spirituality.
So then talk us then from that moment, you know, where you had your breakdown and, you know, you were on the ground, you know, praying for something. Obviously the book came to you, the butterflies came to you, and then obviously you came to have this realization that Wild could exist or something could be done. Like, talk us through that journey, because I think the startup journey is such a incredibly wildly winding road, with booby traps and obstacles everywhere. So talk us through that first kind of 1 to 2 years of Wild, when that was, you know, how that impacted you, and how that's enabled you to be the person and the business leader that you are today.
Yeah, that's a great question. So after the butterflies, I picked up a magazine in the breakfast hall, and it was a Marie Claire, and I opened it, and it was about gender equality, and there just was a quote: if you have a platform to be able to make a difference, you should use it. So I wrote the concept for Wild from scratch. I believe I was divinely guided to write it. I knew I didn't want it to be sterile and corporate, because that is the environments I've been in and been thrown out of. Not worked hard to get out, was thrown out of. So I wanted something, hence the name, right? Wild. I came up with the name first after reading another book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, that spoke about the wild woman. And I came up with the acronym afterwards. Launched 19th of July 2018, so nearly 6 years. And I had never done a keynote, stood in front of 100 women, absolutely terrified, quite funny looking back. Now go on stages of 600 plus. But
that's the journey, right? You have to start.
That's the journey.
I think, and for most people, they don't start. You know, most people have these ideas or these moments of inspiration, like you say, but then, actually I have a job, or I'm a mother and I can't do that because I have kids, or I'm a father and I have kids, or, I'm too old, or I don't have enough money, or I don't have the right network. And again, I think there's there's always more reasons why you shouldn't do it than you should. And that's why not many people actually say, no, I'm going to do it. Not I should do it, I'm going to do it. So I think that's the most important first step.
And I've moved more personally now into business mentorship. So supporting women either leave corporate or build businesses and get visibility, which is something we've achieved a lot through Wild and my own leadership brand. So, the excuses that we hear continually, like you say, the old limiting beliefs, I can't, I'm scared. you have to start somewhere. And I kind of feel that God, the universe, whoever you want to call it, forced me to do this, because this is my calling, right? It's to bring women together in community and raise that consciousness. So wrote the concept for WOW from scratch, had the very first event, and I got a job just to pay the bills, which was actually a third of my salary. And we started by building community. That was the first thing that I did. So it was literally just events once a quarter. Events once a quarter. Did them free to start. My very first event was $300. I bought croissants from Spinneys. That's how it started. And just started doing, events. And then I became a coach.
Sorry to interrupt you. You just bought croissants from Spinneys, but no one else did, right? And I think this is the point, like you did it. And I think, again, just to reinforce the point here and the message to anyone that's listening is that you have to start somewhere, but the most important, it doesn't matter where you start, it's just that you start, right? Because no one else on that day went and bought 300 croissants from Spinneys or 50, however many croissants you bought, right? Out of their own pocket, and their own time. But 300 people, 300 women were the beneficiaries of that time and that investment and that decision to do it. So, again, I think that's such an important point. And you've got a great story here where it's, it was for free, but actually, no, this was your investment in building Wild, right? Because without a network, without that community, well, actually, Wild probably wouldn't exist today. So no, I think it's such an important point that just go, just go and start. What's the worst that can happen, right? Everyone turns up and says, "Oh, I hate croissants." Oh well, no problem. I'll take them home and eat them for the next 3 weeks and gain a few pounds. But yeah, I think it's so important that people just take that first step and learn whilst having a job, without having a job, no matter the circumstance, just try.
And I speak to so many women now who, they're just so frightened of being visible, so frightened of doing posts on LinkedIn, terrified of public speaking. And I get it, I'm an extrovert and a confident person, and I still was terrified. But it is stepping stones, isn't it? When my coach at the time, so 3 or 4 years ago, the one that mentored me to be a coach, because everyone kept saying to me, "Why don't you be a coach? Why don't you be a coach? You've got so much knowledge, you've been in corporate, you've started your own thing." And I remember my coach saying, "Right, you've got to show up on video. You've got to do videos." And I was going, "Oh my God, no way, no, I can't." And we get so stuck in the cage of fear of, is one of my grey hairs poking out? Or what do people think? And actually, when you really let go of that, that's when the magic happens.
Definitely.
Because I can honestly say I really do not care at all. Well, I care about the impact that I make and the success we're going to achieve through our platform. And we obviously take feedback and criticism. So, but I don't care what anyone thinks. And the people that have the most comments to say and the people that are the most judgmental are always doing less than you. They're always the ones that are insecure about themselves and their own success. And I've just forged ahead and almost had these like blinkers on and stayed away from the noise and show up and continually show up. And I've built my LinkedIn to now 33,000 followers and I'm a top voice. And actually, I can do one post and get 5 leads. So I don't care what anyone else has got to say. I've built a business. But I'm now able to show others exactly how to do that.
And I think, that brings up the topic of resilience, right? So, whether people have something negative to say or, have cast judgment, it doesn't really matter, right? It's each to their own. If they have their opinion, let them have their opinion and their feelings. And like you said, maybe they're feeling something that they can't get out and they have to use it in a negative way towards others. But to build a business, you have to have just the most resilience any human being can possibly have. So how did you get from that event, with 300 women and the croissants from Spinneys? I'm going to remember that every time I go in Spinneys now and see the croissants. How do you go from that event to, the next one? You said they're quarterly, right? So what did those first quarterly leaps look like? And at what point did you say, right, this is what Wild is? It's not it's not events, it's not just events, or is it? Like how did that journey unfold over the next kind of 6-12 months?
I guess it's organically grown and morphed into what it is now. And we're still building and we're still learning and we're still dropping things and doing new things. And that is something about entrepreneurship, is the ability to remain agile and flexible.
Yeah.
And I have had a lot of failures with Wild, and we've had to ditch things. My first group coaching program, I got one person on. That's not a group, is it?
No, that's more one-to-one. Yeah.
So, you need to have resilience, and you get to a stage where it's rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So you perfect a formula, you get something that works, and then obviously we planted ourselves into Saudi, which we can go on to talk about. So it just literally was kind of a passion. We weren't making money. I had a job. I was just doing these events. I was just going on the feedback. I was just enjoying the journey. But I have to say that I have, even from then, made a lot of sacrifices for Wild. I would work every weekend. I would sit, I would Google, I would research, I would look at current topics, I would see what trends and themes were for gender equality. I took myself off to study gender equality at INSEAD level, and I just had pancreatitis, so I was still not well. And let me tell you, I thought I knew a lot about the topic. I did that, and it was really, really, really hard. But it's been an incremental step. I became a coach, started bringing more women into the community. Then, the rest is kind of just an onward journey of leadership programs, collaborations, new launches, masterminds.
You mentioned you had pancreatitis, which sounds horrific. So we won't talk too much about that. But
we can.
We'll talk more broadly. So how has you said you started in 2018? Yeah. So the last 6 years, how has the journey over the last 6 years impacted your physical well-being? You've already talked about spiritual, you've already talked about mental a little bit. We can go there a bit more later, but your physical well-being, like how has that enabled you to continue doing what you do over the last 6 years, or has it conflicted with that? Has it caused you problems? Like, what has that journey been like for you in the last 6 years?
Entrepreneurship is a really, really difficult journey, and I am very resilient, and I've been through a lot, but this is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's just so difficult. People just don't realise, I think we can glamorise entrepreneurship, but it's lonely. You are making decisions that you don't know anything about. You are continually living between creativity and this risk. You have no structure. You have no colleagues initially. You have no paycheck. And that's why 95% of the population don't do it.
Fair enough.
I get it. So I have jeopardised my health.
Probably 99% of the population, actually, but
my health has been jeopardised. I had pancreatitis. I don't think that was to do with my entrepreneurial journey. That was just something completely random. Nearly died. I've got Crohn's disease, which is something I do talk about, and I manage. That's been horrific. Crawling into doctors, misdiagnosed, given steroids, which made me absolutely bonkers, more bonkers. Medication that was very close to chemo, all my hair fell out.
Wow.
And still was showing up, and still was doing events, and still leading, and still inspiring, even through that pain. But I do believe that the body keeps score, and any ailment or pain is indicative of trauma. So I've remained curious and explored, why have I got Crohn's disease? What is this indicative of? It's actually indicative of rejection, guilt and shame. That's what Crohn's is. I've had migraines from nowhere for 2 years, unrelenting, still have them. I'm still showing up. I'm still leading and inspiring. And when I've looked at how to get rid of migraines, control them, what was the trigger? I mean, they are a medical mystery first and foremost, but they are debilitating. When I've had some, you feel like you're having a stroke.
Yeah.
But I actually believe that the shock of finding out my dad had dementia was the catalyst for them, and I've had them ever since.
Yeah. You know, for the last 45 minutes or whatever, we've been talking about how your confidence has kind of gotten you through, and your ability to stand up and speak, your principles. How have all of those things been challenged, right? How have there been points in this journey where you're like, nah, I can't do this. I can't do this today, or I can't do this anymore. Like
all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I mean, you know, great example. Last year we had a project for a really big deal value that I'd worked hours and hours and hours and hours, and we were anticipating this certain amount of cash, and I was off investing in other parts of the business.
Yep.
And then the deal fell through. And there've been many times where I have been literally on the floor in tears going, I just can't do this. I just like, what, why, what, you know, how? But it's almost like I'm too far in now.
Yeah.
You know, I've got responsibilities, I've got a team, I've got overheads, I've got a commitment to my community. And there is absolutely no way in the world I'm off to get a job.
Yeah.
One, I'm probably unemployable.
Probably. You think?
But, you know, two, how could I work for someone now when I've been exposed to freedom and making all my own choices? So
I know firsthand that every day is full of challenges.
yeah.
But the business that you've built particularly requires you to be have a positive, projective, you know, voice and appearance, right?
Yeah.
Like you that's the business you've built. And I assume that not every day you feel that way. And probably even when you're on stage, sometimes you don't feel that way, but you have to project this presence, this voice, the brand that you've built, right? Not just around Wild, but around yourself. So when you're on the floor, when the deal falls through, or a commercial partner has let you down, or anyone has let you down, or just feeling shit, who picks you up? How's that gone? You know, who's been there to pick you up? You know, because entrepreneurship, as you've said, and as I've said before, is a, you know, bloody lonely journey.
Yeah.
So is it you pick yourself up? Do you have friends or family that pick you up? And how have you been able to kind of like pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and carry on? Is there anyone to thank for that, or is it a solo effort?
So it was interesting. The job that I had to pay the bills, I only left 2.5 years ago, and I went through this 6 to 8 month period of extreme loneliness.
Yeah.
And that's crazy for someone that leads a community.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Kind of ironic.
Yeah. But you don't resonate with old friends anymore. And I'm sure you've been through the same, right? Because I'm not in corporate. I'm not speaking their language anymore. I'm not in the same frustrations. I'm building a business. So I needed to be around other entrepreneurs, other people who are walking the same path that I am. And so I've built now a very solid support network. I have always invested in coaches and mentors.
Yeah.
I've spent $6 figures in world-class coaches.
Wow.
I've worked with, some of the best coaches in the world.
How did you get to that? Like, because deciding to make that investment is a fairly big and unique decision, right? Not many people invest that amount. So what got you there?
So, I mean, they do in my industry. You know, people are avid investors in their personal growth and development. But when I wanted to be a coach, I needed to learn how to be a coach. And there's one thing being a coach, but you've got to market yourself. You've got to sell your services. I've just been following someone on Instagram, and I resonated with her story and her message. I reached out to her. I think it was like about £10,000, and that's a lot of money when you're not earning.
Yeah.
And I just swallowed it and invested it, but I could see the ROI.
Yeah.
And then, as I've earned money along the way, how else are you going to get to know the strategies, structures and formulas? One lady I worked with in LA who had built masterminds, memberships.
Yeah.
She's got a 7-figure coaching business.
Yeah.
So I watched her, I studied her, and I thought, well, I want to grow. I need those tools.
Yep.
So I'm going to work with her.
Yep.
I still have another coach. I've got a lady in Australia now. And again, your appetite and your level of investment seems to go up each time.
Yeah.
So that's even taking risks. But, women have a tendency to not invest in themselves, to put everything and everyone else first, to have a designer bag and business class, but not work on themselves. And I was on someone else's podcast yesterday, but I was like, everyone wants the quick fix. Everyone wants the tools and the strategy and the overnight success. It is not an overnight gig.
No.
It is consistency. It is small steps daily. So coaches that hold space for me. I now have I remember one of my coaches saying to me through this transitional period, you're changing, you're evolving, you're vibrating on a completely different level. You will meet the right people. And it's amazing how the universe works, because I was at the park near where I live, where I go daily actually, feeding the stray cats. And this woman just popped up. She was like, hi, you feed the cats too? We've been friends ever since. She's like one of my closest friends. And I'm now very good friends with other female-led entrepreneurs, as you know, Tash from Tish Tash, who owns a huge business, who's very vocal about the challenges in mental health and everything that she's gone through. So big support network. I also have different therapists, different healers, a circle of go-tos that I will go to as and when I need that support. And we have to have that.
100%. I think you can only know yourself what you need, right? Everybody's different in terms of what they need from not just a support network, but I would almost label it a performance network, right? So how you get to be the best version of yourself, for the business, the type of business that you're growing. So you touched on the trigger for your migraines potentially being establishing that your father had been diagnosed with dementia. And actually that's the way we got connected, because I saw on LinkedIn that you'd posted about it, and I was like, oh, well, I can relate to that, because my father, has, not exactly the same. He has Alzheimer's, and everybody gets affected differently, different journeys. And it is without question the most horrific thing I've ever witnessed. And obviously it means a lot more to me because it's my dad, but not just the impact on him, but actually, and arguably, and people may disagree with me here, but the impact on my mum, right? That's the bigger effect, because it's so horrible to watch. And it's even worse compounded by the fact that you're 3,500 miles away, can't just pop in to put the kettle on and make them a cup of tea. So I think that distance now feels even greater, right? Not just a plane ride away, but a world away. And that's hard. And you talk about sacrifice that you have to make to build a business. This is the ultimate sacrifice, right? Being away from family and being in build mode and business mode and not being able to be there as much as you perhaps would want to. So how has that, you said it was 2 years ago. How has that, the last 2 years and the impact of your father's diagnosis, not just triggering migraines, but how has that impacted your journey with the business and your own personal journey?
So first of all, it's horrendous, and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. And I am really grateful to people like you who actually reached out and said, "Do you want to talk? Are you okay?" I think especially when my dad was so handsome, market trader, cheeky chappy, And to watch that change to someone who is barely recognizable, it's just wicked. And, you know, it has really affected me, and it is something that I do really struggle with. So I'm trying to actually get back at the moment to see him. But I've got such, you know, responsibilities with my business that I can't. Because I have to be here, because I have to show up, and I have to be at stage, and I have these, you know, speaking gigs or whatever it might be. But what I do know, and what does give me the comfort, is if my dad was of sound mind, he would say,
what are you doing back here?
I want you to be hustling and growing your business. Yeah, it's you know, it's a really, really challenging, awful thing to witness. But as I say, he would want me being here, he'd want me growing my business, and that gives me a lot of comfort.
And that's what he did, right? That's what he did in his prime years. And I think it is difficult as people live longer and people travel the world, and, you know, we're in a generation where, you know, parents need caring for, and, you know, in my case, kids need caring for as well. And you're growing a business. It's like, which way do I look? You know, where do I give my best energy? Where do I give my energy reserves to? And where have I got no energy? And I think that's, you know, it's a really hard thing to do. So, you know, I totally understand and get, you know, the situation you're in. And like I said, that's why I reached out in the first place, because it's not nice. And I wish that we could have connected on a nice topic, but equally I didn't want to wait for a nice topic. It's like, no, this, you know, like you said, you have these moments like, no, like, I can see what you're going through in building a business. I can see now what you're going through on a personal level. You know, there's too many similarities here not to put kind of, you know, minds together or just be there as a layer of support. And I think, you know, I try and do that more now, because for a long time I just built on my own. You know, I didn't, you know, we've always had a good team at Level, but outside of the team, you know, friends that I grew up with, they're in the UK and they're doing their thing. And here in Dubai, I was working 12 hours a day, like you said. And, you know, other than my wife, I wasn't seeing anyone else. You know, I was just working. And that's what I wanted to build. And that's what was the most important thing to me. But then when life throws challenges at you, like, oh, actually, who can I talk to about this? You know, and, so I think it is important to, like you said, to have that support network, that performance network around you, but also others who just get it, you know, who have got similar experiences. So, the last 2 years have obviously had challenges on the family side. But what have the last 2 years looked like on a business level?
Yeah, amazing, really. So we launched in Saudi as the first and only women's network, which is something I'm incredibly proud of. You know, it was quite a frightening, scary project. I stood in Riyadh Immigration in 2022, like, oh my goodness, I'm launching Wild Riyadh tomorrow. And, you know, it's great to be the first to enter a new country, but with that comes resistance and its own set of challenges, as you well know. It didn't earn Wild a contract with the United Nations Global Compact Network, which is something we're exceptionally proud of. And as you know, the CBRE Award for Best Social Diversity Value Business. So that's been, on a personal level, very gratifying because when we do events here, we never attract any Emirati ladies. And obviously there's a very small percentage of them compared to Saudi.
Never?
No.
Wow. Okay, that's a challenge off the back of this this podcast. That's the next challenge.
But in Saudi, 90 to 95% of our audience are Saudi females. And the appreciation, humility, grace that they show is just like hits you and you're like, wow, this is why I do the work I do. You know, they come to and they say, wow, this is incredible. We need this platform. You've given us this opportunity to have community, to share voice. And that's never been done. And for me, you're like, this is why I do this work. And, you know, Saudi women are the most phenomenal, mind-blowing women. You know, they are PhD holders.
Yep.
They are super smart. They've got children. They're on boards. It's very inspiring to watch.
Yep.
They almost put Europeans a little bit to shame with their sense of academia.
Yeah.
And it is an exciting region. The trajectory of growth, as you know, is just accelerated. They've got 65% of their population's Gen Z, who are radical reformists. They're ethical. They believe in DEI. They believe in balance. That's interesting. That's exciting because, as you know, in our workday, it's put up and shut up. If you don't like it, there's the door. So, that's been incredible. We have moved into the leadership training space and still doing our coaching and membership and community. And also now I'm doing more business mentorship. So with my 6 years of Wild and building that up, supporting other women take the risk.
Just get started.
Get visible. Speak up. Get on stage, whatever it might be. And we're just about to launch the Wild Monetization Method, which is something we've been working on behind the scenes, which is a culmination and combination of all of my learnings and wisdom and everything I've learned from these world-class coaches to get Wild to the level it's at. I'm coaching women this method, but also we are doing our first live event next week.
Nice.
And we are launching a digital platform for people to buy this course and do it in their own time.
Awesome.
So we've just done a new logo, a new concept, and I'm excited because when you start building a business, you just don't know where to go and what to do. And even simple things like graphic design, a photographer, getting someone to do this sort of, this equipment content creation, and obviously having been through all of that and navigating it through failings as well.
Plenty of, I'm sure.
And also, how to monetize a business, right? Because so many women lead businesses or communities and they don't monetize them. And I'm just such a big believer that we deserve to be compensated and paid, especially when we are service to others. And women feel guilty for charging. They don't charge what they're worth. And I now work with clients to get their LinkedIn up to speed because I want them to do one post and generate 5 leads. And obviously that takes a little bit of time, but I know the tools and the hacks and the systems. So the WMM is our latest creation, our latest brainchild.
I think it was one of your posts that you said you don't, or you get asked a lot to do kind of appearances and talks at corporates, but they don't have any budget. And you have to laugh because the reality is they do have budget. But we'll tackle that topic maybe on a separate podcast. But how you're right and I don't think it's just a female issue personally, but I think it probably impacts females more. But when you're building your brand, particularly in this part of the world, so many organizations expect you to do things for free, right? And I think that's there's a monetization method or strategy you need to have, but you also need to have the confidence and the conviction to say no, right? I'm worth more than nothing, and my service or my platform or my product is worth something. You either pay for it or you don't have it. But I think too many people are scared of offending people or saying no. So did you get to that point? Did you always have it? Like how did you get there?
I love this conversation. It's having these boundaries of self-worth. Look, admittedly, when you start out, you do the pro bono work because you're building a profile, you're building your leadership brand, and you want and need the credibility. But it got to a stage where I think I'd done 3 keynotes consecutively, pro bono, in the same week. Every time I have to have my hair blow dried and a new outfit, and it takes 3 to 4 hours out of my day. And the delegation have paid to come to the event. So the organisers are making money from you coming to talk. And one of my go-tos, one of my actually healers, her name's Maria Leonard, She's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Because by then, I'm feeling resentful.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Pissed off. Yeah.
Annoyed. You're annoyed.
Yeah.
And she's like, right, you've got to stop doing this. And you've just got to say no. You ask them what's their budget.
Yeah.
And you say no.
Yeah.
And it was a brave and bold move, but I did. And then all the paid opportunities came. But I will say that we have a culture in this region that everyone wants to collab. And we need to redefine what that word means.
Yep.
It doesn't mean you can come and leverage Wild to sell your products and services.
No.
Collaboration is quid pro quo.
Yeah.
That's mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm so grateful for all of the opportunities we have through Wild, but I am inundated with people who want to collab with Wild.
Yeah.
And it translates to, well, no, you can't, because I've invested all of my own money.
Yeah.
I built a business over 6 years with blood, sweat and tears, and you just want to come in and piggyback it for your own gain.
Just milk it for free, yeah.
So boundaries, you know, I don't, and I say this with like the deepest humility, because I'm just not someone who is arrogant enough to be like, oh, I'm too good to meet anybody.
Yeah.
But I qualify on LinkedIn. How do you envisage the collaboration?
Yeah.
What does this look like?
What does this mean? Yeah, yeah.
Because I get asked for coffee 20 times a week.
Yeah.
Now, if I met 20 people for coffee,
Yeah. That's a lot of coffee, first of all. Yeah, it's too much coffee
it's
for
a
one
lot
human.
of coffee, but you know,
also a lot of time wasted.
it's a lot of time wasting. So, and they're like, well, I just want to find out what you do. And I'm like, okay, well, we
look
do
at my
X, Y,
website.
Z.
Yeah.
And also, you know, look, I do some pro bono work, particularly things I care about, like schools, universities.
Yeah.
If there are certain projects of things that a matter of the heart, where I'm like, do you know what, I'm going to go and do this. But everything else is a no. And, you know, 99% of work for Women's Day we turn down. One, because it's just a PR stunt and we don't want to be attached to this one day cake, pink cake stuff.
Yeah.
So now it's like, what's your budget? You know, when you think that I've invested 6 figures USD on coaches.
Alone. Yeah. Not to mention the amount you've invested in building the business.
Yeah. How do you get the ROI? So I have now really implemented strong boundaries. Don't rarely meet people unless I really feel it is mutually. And you just have to.
Yeah.
You just have to. That's not to say that I don't care. And if someone needs my support, that I'm not going to give my time.
Yeah.
But, you know, this whole can we collab?
Yeah, very rarely does it actually materialize into any commercial gain or benefit.
People want to pick your brains and know how.
Yeah.
How have you done what you've done?
Steal your ideas.
And how, I've got a really funny story actually, and I want to share it. 2 women on LinkedIn chased me incessantly for a Zoom. We love Wild. We love what you've done. So I finally gave in. This is about 2 or 3 years ago. This was also one of the turning points that I was like, enough. And one was based in Singapore and one was based in Zurich. So they get on the Zoom. They say, we love what you've done with Wild. Thank you so much. We'd like to understand more about your revenue streams. So I was a little bit like, okay, well, we have various programs and offers that we've built. Yeah. Well, we'd quite like to build a women's network in Dubai as well. And also we see that you've launched in Saudi. So we wonder if you could connect us there. And I just was like, hold on a second. Like, what?
What's going on here?
You know, and I just thought, like, the temerity of, like, getting me on a Zoom and one wanting to know how so that you can do it. And then what? I'm going to get you in my market as a competitor.
Yeah.
And I said, look, why don't you focus on Zurich and Singapore?
Yeah.
Your own market and build community in your own. And I spoke to my mentor at the time, and she was like, well, it's your own fault for having the meeting. And I thought, yeah, she's got a point. And then that was like, this is just beyond ridiculous.
Yeah. Triggers, right? I think you have, again, you have to go through them, like the pro bono keynote speeches. You have to do it to build up that network, the experience, but also create the value, because no one wants someone on stage that's never done anything or never spoken before. So I think you have to go through it, and it does build your resilience, but there has to come a point where you start saying no and start saying no, but it eventually has to come a point where no becomes the default. And I think it's very hard for people to get there because of that fear of, but what if I miss out on opportunity?
No, I don't feel
Chances
like that at
are
all.
you're not missing out on anything. So yeah, I think it's really important. You touched on, you said some of the work you do in Saudi brings you, joy and that real kind of positive feeling and emotions. Like, we've talked about the dark times and the struggles, but what, tell me about times, during the day, the week, the month, and the business cycle with Wild that really make you feel like, this is what it's all about.
Yeah, I think when we did an event in Saudi last year in the gaming centre where it was 130 women in this
Yeah, that looked really cool.
VOV.
The pictures look really cool. Obviously, I wasn't there, but the pictures look really cool.
The adrenaline, it was just like, it was the first time I'd done this, but I got everyone to stand up and repeat like after me. I am ready, I am willing to support you, so together we may rise. And it was just like the energy in the room was like, wow. That for me was like, I remember going back to my hotel, like just wired. And it actually took me quite a long time to actually recover energetically from that. That was a moment where I was like, whew, wow, that I am the pioneer and leader of this. Yeah. That was amazing. Also watching my clients get results, watching them monetize a business. I've got an amazing client at the moment who's got an F&B innovation consultancy. Okay. And, was doing some BD and making moves. And she's come to work with me. And I was like, right, we're going to do an event, a VIP event. Here's the structure. This is what we're going to do. And she just sits in front of me. She goes, I'm so scared. I feel like you strapped me into a rocket and it's about to take off. And just watching that excitement, anticipation, and I'm actually going to go to this launch event with her, but just she's taking action and she's doing it. Yeah. That for me is really, really, really rewarding work. So I think there are
I also saw a post this week about, is it a Filipina that is she a client or a member of Wild, and the network that she's built, that looks phenomenal as well.
Yeah, Joanna's actually my living, walking testimonial. So she came up to me 2 years ago, literally terrified, like anxious, and said, I really need your help. I said, yes, you do. First coaching session, I said, what are your values? What do you care about? And she said, I really care about my Filipino sisters. I said, why don't you build a community for them? Yep. And she looked at me and was like, no way. And I was like, you don't compare my chapter 20 with Wild, with your chapter 1. Yeah. So I mentored her, and so this is something which really was a point in my career. I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually change people's lives here. She walked in after session 3 and was like, you've changed my life. She was so different. Yeah. Confident, smiley. Yeah. And like she had tears in her eyes and I had tears in my eyes, and I just, I just gave her the tools and the wisdom as her coach. Yeah. She launched the Thriving Filipina Circle in April 2022 with 15 women. Mm-hmm. It's now the largest female-led business community for Filipino women in the Middle East. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And it really is like... It's a little bit unbelievable if you knew her before and now. And actually, we did a Wild event this week, and she came up to me and she just said, I'll just always be so grateful to you, Emma. Like, you changed my life. And now she's like standing with a microphone and leading community. Yeah. It's like night and day. Yeah. So that's been an amazing, amazing success story. Oh, yeah, I've got another one.
Go on then.
Being at Princess Noor University in Saudi. Wow. Like, CBRE had said, we want you to build this Future Leaders program. PNU, 33,000 female students. On campus, they've got a tube in
crazy.
the campus.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And
Must have been like full circle, going from an all-girls school to an all-girls university. It's like, oh yeah, maybe this is where I was meant to be.
I just, we've been back 3 or 4 times, but I go and I love the naivety of like when we're young, we're so excited to start the working world. I'm like, that'll soon change. But the hope that's in them and the drive and motivation, but just standing and being with them and sharing my knowledge and them coming up to me and saying, you're so inspiring and, we need Wild and we love your work. That for me, like future generations of talent is something which absolutely fills my heart up so much.
Yeah, no, it's important to share the lessons, right? And I think whilst that's the business that you're in, you also do it through podcasts like this and other engagements. I think, younger people, well, not just younger people, actually anyone of any age can benefit from just people like yourself just talking openly and honestly. Because, like I said, LinkedIn, Instagram, other platforms make entrepreneurship look so glamorous. And, to be honest, you do a very good job of showing the energy and the excitement and, all of the great stuff that comes with being an entrepreneur, because we're fortunate, right? We're privileged actually to lead this life and have this opportunity. And it's great that we share that. But I think you're also talking honestly as well, that it's not just all glamour and, having your hair blow dried and newer buyers or whatever. It's also the sitting on the floor crying and, not knowing what tomorrow will bring. Yep. And I think it's so important that we share that journey, because it isn't easy. It is fun. Like, I would never do anything else personally. And like you said, if Wild failed, which the reality is no business is immune to failure, right? Even the biggest of businesses. And we've now lived through great recessions and COVID and all sorts over the last kind of 10, 20 years. So no business is immune to failure. But even that said, I still wouldn't do anything different. And if it did fail, I don't think I'd be able to go and get another job, because I feel like I'm almost, unemployable, right? I can only do my own thing, because that's where I can give it my all. That's where I can give the best version of myself. So with that said, to finish off, for anyone that has made it this far, looking back on the last 6 years of Wild and, the years before that, that you worked through a corporate world and the successes you had, because obviously you're a successful in sales and other roles, and, the challenges that you faced. What are the 3 main takeaways that you can leave our listeners with in terms of, building a business and the entrepreneurial journey that you've been on? What are the 3 main kind of lessons that you would want to share and leave with the listeners?
So just going back to like the entrepreneurial journey and also talking about the failings, and that's something I am a huge advocate for. And on my LinkedIn, I talk about my failings. I've spoke about dementia, my dad having dementia. I've spoken about pancreatitis. I speak about having meltdowns because when I got my blank sheet of paper to write Wild, and I do this with my own clients, you base a business on your values. And my top 2 values are authenticity and freedom. Freedom to live life on our own terms, and freedom to not be suffering and in a mental cage of your own thoughts. So that bleeds into every single thing that I do. So I think we need to be authentic and stay true to who we really, really are. Because that innate ability to storytell, to have these conversations, you can bet your bottom dollar that there'll be someone watching or someone sitting going, oh, been through that. I'm going through that. Oh, really? Does she go through that too?
Not
Does
just
he
me.
experience that?
Yeah.
It's not just me.
Yeah.
Oh, one of my parents is not very well, so on and so forth. So being authentic and true to who you are.
Yeah.
Working on yourself, because you are your greatest asset.
Yeah.
I've learnt the hard way. I have had burnout. I fell off the stage in tears. It took me 3 months to recover. And now I take blocks of time.
Yep.
So I was in Thailand that is the benefit of entrepreneurship, is that freedom to, I guess, do what you want,
Yep.
I mean, obviously I have responsibilities and commitments, but, So working on yourself, go to therapy, go and address your trauma. We've all got trauma, no matter how big or small. Some people it's lofty and massive things. Some people it might not be, but we do all have it. Working on your mindset, getting a good coach or mentor that's walked the path that you want to follow.
Yep.
So authenticity, invest in you like a full-time job, and really know that anything is possible. And once you step out of your comfort zone and embrace fear, embrace the fact that, so many women say to me, I can't do that. What if it doesn't work? And I'm like, but what if you do it and it works and goes better than expected?
Yeah.
You never know how something's going to work until you try. I've launched things that I thought, this is going to be the one, people are going to love it.
Yeah.
And it just isn't.
Yeah.
And then, I've done other things, and they've just, like we did a mastermind for female leaders with Saudi women and women here. And it's just been such a huge success. So get out of your comfort zone, try new things, and know that anything is possible when you work on yourself and remove fear, this limitation, and these doubts that we have.
Yeah. So to summarize then, be authentic.
Yep.
Invest in yourself.
Yes.
And be agile to different eventualities and different people, things working, things not working. Is that a fair summary of the third one?
Anything is possible.
Anything
and
is possible.
Lean in. And you only know when you listen to, huge entrepreneurs, like Tony Robbins did his first event and had like 3 people. I mean, watch
and it went all right for him. Yeah.
It's gone all right for these people,
Yeah.
but they talk about their failings and know that it's okay, and meditate.
That's a good one. On that note, Emma, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I do appreciate and I really value the time that you've taken to come here today, because it's in short supply, and there's 20 other coffees you could have had today instead. So
always got time for you, Gary.
I'm grateful for that. But I'm a massive fan
Thank
and
you.
a huge advocate of the work you do.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's not only super, super important that the work is done, but I think you're absolutely the right person to be doing it. It's obviously your calling, and it is nice to watch. It's nice to watch the authentic journey that you've been on. We'll continue to support from the sidelines and on LinkedIn and everything, both the successes that you'll continue to have, but also the challenges that you'll also go through, because that yes, you're 6 years into the journey, but there's another 6, another 6, another 6, and that means compounding challenges and opportunities that, I wanted to thank you for the great work you're doing, because I don't know if people say it enough, but it is so important, and keep up the good work.
I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.